Hey there, business builders. Today, we're diving into the secret sauce of successful businesses, that is effective communication. We'll be unpacking the power of the Daily Huddle and how this quick, action-based chat can transform your day-to-day operations. So let's jump into the world of business communication on this, our 50th episode. Well, welcome to the Business Builders Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Brenton Gowland.
And I'm Ron Tomlin.
And Ron, you have just come back from Borneo.
Yes, a wonderful experience too.
Now, if you're a listener, you know we did an episode last fortnight. Well, Ron and I pre-recorded that before Ron went away to Borneo. And I was telling everyone in one of the latest episodes that I think you are one of the best I have seen at actually getting that work-life balance right. Because you have a few holidays a year, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I work hard in between, but by the same token, I like my holidays.
Just out of interest, have you always done that? Have you always gone for the, we're going to go on holidays thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When I first became a tech chair, I took 6 weeks off and went to France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the next time we got together as a group of chairs, somebody said, one of the problems with being a tech chair is that you can never take time off. I said, I just took 6 weeks off last year. He said, how'd you do that? I said, well, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to. That's how I did it.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you've just had that ingrained into you forever, because I've been pretty much the opposite. I've never taken time off.
I wouldn't use the word forever. I had to learn the hard way that it was important.
Did your wife teach you?
I think my family taught me, my wife in particular.
Well, that's really good. Yeah.
I have to take now at least 2 weeks off around Christmas time, because here in Australia, of course, Christmas is in summertime. So I take 2 weeks off, and that's my recharge time.
Yeah.
And if I don't have that, the year goes badly.
And for those of you who don't know, Ron originally comes from Chicago.
Detroit.
Oh, did I get that wrong? How did I do that?
I don't know.
Detroit, my bad. Anyway, so yes, in Australia, we basically get forced to take 2 weeks off at Christmas. Because even if you worked over Christmas, no one else does.
You can cut it down to a week or something like that. But the truth of the matter is you've got so many public holidays at that time that unless you're in emergency services, it's forced.
Well, all I can say is I think I've been working with you on and off for 20 or more years.
Absolutely.
But I've really been impressed, particularly in the last few, about how you prioritize going on holidays and taking time off. And I said to everyone when we did the Sim Penzo interview about 2 episodes ago that I think that's something that we should all attain to do. So when you went around, I was talking positive about you.
Oh, thank you very much.
There you go.
That's the way it should be.
Now, Ron, something special today. It's our 50th podcast episode.
I can't believe it.
Let's quit.
I think it's fantastic we've got to that little milestone. But I also think it's worth not necessarily spending a lot of time during the episode reflecting, but at 50 episodes, I would like to offer something to our listeners that I think if I look back at all the topics that we've covered over this time, we've done marketing, we've done strategy, we've done a series on networking. What's important is that we offer at this stage one thing that really I think would make a difference. So what's the one thing that would make a difference from your perspective? If you had to
in terms of what?
In terms of business. We're talking to business builders.
Yeah.
If you said there's one thing you can do that will make a significant improvement in your business, what would it be?
Okay. And just to put that in context, because again, if this is the first time you're listening, yes, we call ourselves the Business Builders Podcast. And our definition of a business builder is someone who works on themselves, like I was talking about with you and taking holidays. I need to work on myself and take more time out. But it's someone who works on themselves in order to improve their business. So what I'm hearing you're asking me is what would I do within my business to improve it the most?
Yeah.
And I'll take when I was running an advertising agency, for example, I think the most important thing is to make sure everyone's on the same page. And with the clients I work with at the moment, and I work with clients that have probably, well, one of them has about 130 staff, another one has 20 staff, another one has 50 staff. The biggest thing I see is that people don't know, or they're not all on the same page, or they're in siloed departments, whatever it might be. But I think it's getting that communication piece right. So everyone knows what's going on. Everyone knows the vision of the business. Everyone knows what they're meant to be doing. I think that would improve people's businesses the most from my observation.
And that would be my observation as well. I've never been in a business that has asked me to come in and look at how can we improve things. Talking to people, it's always communication. We need to improve communication. And the question is, how can you do that easily and effectively? It's not an easy task overall, but there are some things you can do. And I'd like to share the one thing that I've seen that makes a huge difference in a business. And it's the simplest thing you can think of. And it's not my idea. It comes from Vern Harnish in the Rockefeller Habits. He does an entire chapter on communication and the way people communicate within organizations. And the one thing that makes the biggest difference, and I've seen it time and time again, when people don't have it and they introduce it, or they have something and they start using this discipline. I call it the Daily Huddle. Vern Harnish calls it the Daily Huddle. Some people call it the toolbox meeting.
Well, I work with some manufacturers and they call it toolbox meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's that idea that to prevent a lot of the meeting noise that happens, have a regular focused meeting at the beginning of every day. And Vern Harnish's book, The Rockefeller Habits, comes from his reading of, I think it was the book Giant by John D. Rockefeller.
Okay.
Where he had a discipline with his executives. In fact, he went to the next level. He actually bought them houses. I think it was in Lincoln Park in Chicago. And so that they would have to walk in together to the office every day. And then they would walk home.
Well, to have a boss that buys you a house, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
It was quite impressive. He recognized the importance of having a regular, daily get-together with the people who you're working directly with to talk about what happened yesterday.
Yes.
And what's going to happen today.
Yes.
And what are the potential problems or obstacles that you foresee that are going to happen today.
So that's the structure of it.
That's the structure. And it's simple. And the why is to prevent all the coordination problems, all the communication problems that inevitably happen because people don't know what other people are doing during the day.
Okay. So the reason, the why would you have a daily huddle? And that is simply that, to make sure that everyone understands what's going on.
Yeah. Every day. And you think about the discipline of doing that every day and you don't miss out. If somebody's away, okay, they're away. That doesn't mean you don't have it. I've seen more excuses than I've had hot dinners about why we can't do this. And yet when people start implementing it, start instituting this as a daily ritual across their direct work group. And that's the thing. It's only with your direct work group. So,
that's interesting.
You can cascade it down from the top to the bottom of the organization, but everybody has that daily get together with their direct work group.
Yep.
So it's probably no more than about 5 or 6 people.
Right.
It's no more than 10 to 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
You're not tackling any other problems. If you identify any issues or you identify that more coordination or more communication needs to happen, happens outside the meeting, it's 15 minutes and there's only a couple of things on the agenda. What did we achieve yesterday? What have we got on the plate for today? And what do I anticipate the challenges or obstacles or problems that they're going to be? That's it. Move on. Next person.
So it's really about making sure that everyone's on the same page for the day. And then look, I'll go into this. In the agency that I ran, we used to do this, and that was we would actually do it via Slack. Because obviously with people working from home, and there's a push at the moment, if you're reading the media or if you're in any big business, people are pushing people to get back into the office. Even I read Zoom the other day. The people who benefited the most, one of the businesses, I think we would agree that Zoom grew exponentially during COVID pandemic.
Boy, do I wish I had shares in Zoom.
Yeah, well, they're now insisting that people work 3 or 4 days a week in the office. I was reading that the other day and thinking, that's interesting, isn't it? The people who were leading that work from home revolution by making it possible for people, and obviously Teams have got their video platform or their conferencing platform. Google has their platform as well. Everyone's got their video platform, but the video platform themselves, Zoom, are encouraging people to get back into the office. But while we were away, or even we used to do this because, design agency, we might be sitting at desks next to each other, but we'd still do it via Slack. We'd have those similar 3 questions that we would answer at the start of every morning. People would put in what they're working on that day, what they saw as blockers, and what help they needed from other people. It was those 3 points.
I think identifying what went on yesterday and where the flow goes to today is important, because it starts with, well, I achieved something. It's a mindset more than anything else.
Yep.
But it's important to cover those points off and limit it. If somebody starts on a tangent, we need to solve this problem, or there's a bigger issue that I've identified. Yes, there's another meeting for that, or there's another forum for that. This is just about coordination for the day.
Yep.
Everybody's on the same page. You can start the day with everybody knowing how they're contributing and what other people are doing and where the coordination points are.
And that would work well from a very small business to obviously very large businesses if we do what you said, and that is to cascade the flow of information in whatever fashion that might be, right? But if you think about in a small business where everyone's sitting probably 2 to 4 meters apart or whatever it is, that process becomes very easy. And like you said, with Vern Harnish and talking about the Rockefeller habits and having execs walking to work together where they're going to discuss things, you have people sitting near each other where they're going to discuss things. And as long as, like you said, at the start of the day, they talk about what they're doing for the day, that you can see how that would work really well. Everyone's working together for the same result. But when you start to get into a bigger company where cascading of information needs to start happening, where it gets more complex, I think that's where a structured daily huddle, you might call it something different in a small business. Like I said, we did it on Slack, and bigger companies and companies with a younger generation who are using messenger apps and all those kind of things would naturally gravitate to messaging and so forth. And it's in a sense similar to standing and having a conversation with someone. It produces the same result. So great. But what I'm getting at is that a larger company would have a lot more benefit, I think, from spreading information around if they had those daily huddles in a structured way throughout their organization.
Absolutely.
And I know you've got examples.
Oh, look, I actually saw Vern Harnish many years ago in Adelaide. Yeah,
in Adelaide?
Yeah. And here's a guy.
How many years ago are we talking?
Oh, probably something like 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
And one thing he said right at the beginning that turned me off, absolutely.
Turned you off?
Turned me off. He said, routine will set you free. And here I was, having just been in very structured organizations, and I was out on my own now. And the reason I was out on my own was because I wanted less routine. And here's a guy saying, routine will set you free. And I thought, I do not need to listen to this. In fact, I left at morning tea.
You seriously did?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I've got better things to do with my life.
Can't see any pride there, Ron.
No, not at all. And what I learned, unfortunately, over the next 12 years after that is he was absolutely right. If you do things that allow just a little bit of discipline, a little bit of routine, you grab back so much more time. And his whole premise, when I finally read his book, his whole premise was have regular meetings so you don't have to have those intermittent meetings that nobody knows why they're there. It's about coordination, but there's no set agenda. Don't really know what's going on, but let's waste half an hour. And I reflect on my time in corporations. Well, those were the order of the day. Have a regular routine meeting. It's only short, but it covers all the stuff that you need to do for the rest of the day. And if something doesn't happen, if something that you have to go and see somebody, you have to have a meeting with somebody, that's out of the norm. The norm is you are catching up with them every day.
If you do it properly, you reduce the amount of meetings you need anyway, right?
Absolutely. And that's what he said. And I should have listened.
So I always, with my clients, I always suggest to people that there's 3 meetings that it takes to run a business. And that is operations, sales and marketing, because I do put them in together because you can have a marketing meeting, you can have a sales meeting, but you got to get those 2 groups talking to each other. So there's 2. And the third one is strategy meeting. So your directors or higher level management should have information cascading to them from those other 2 meetings.
Absolutely.
And at least once a month, where those meetings might be weekly, but at least once a month, you got to review the strategy, look at where you're going, make decisions, and then cascade the information back to those other 2 meetings.
And if you read the Rockefeller Habits, Vern does talk about all that structure of meetings in exactly the format you talked about. He talks about quarterly meetings as well to set the theme for the next quarter. All that sort of thing. But it all comes back. All of that structure comes back to having every day coordinated well and starting well with the daily huddle.
So we're talking about really a fourth meeting, which is fine. And I see what you're saying here. But that fourth meeting, it almost becomes like the feelers within the business, right? Because you've got those, let's say you've got 3 meetings, something like that anyway. You might have different departments, so you might have more meetings depending on the amount of departments you've got. But having those daily huddles with your staff then creates a network within the business where information can flow in 2 directions.
Absolutely. And people talk about all the mechanisms that are available now, Slack, messaging, Zoom. And it's fantastic because what it means now is that everybody really has no excuse not for at least participating in some way. But my experience says, especially in terms of the 2-way, there is nothing that allows you to get a feel for what's going on in other people's lives and their work lives and so on as face-to-face communication. You can hide a lot of stuff on Zoom. You can hide a lot of stuff behind messaging, but you can't hide that perception of nervousness or anxiety or reticence or whatever it is when you're face-to-face with someone else.
Which prompts other questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you see that, it's like, Ron, what's going on? Are you okay?
And you take that outside the meeting. And it's not about the coordination. It gives people who are in authority or leadership the opportunity to explore beyond that if they sense that there's something wrong.
So as we discussed, as I mentioned earlier, like the 3 questions that we had back when I was involved with that agency was, what am I working on today? What are my blockers and what help do I need? So therein lies, if you need help, you might arrange a meeting with a creative director. You might arrange a meeting with your management like myself. You might arrange a meeting with someone else because you need more information. We might have to arrange a meeting with the client because we don't have everything we need. But those questions and reporting, or what are my blockers? Oh, well, this is a blocker. I have another project which is bearing down on me, which is going to threaten this deadline. All right, can we redistribute? What I'm getting at is it's an action-based meeting.
Yeah, and there needs to be somebody coordinating that meeting. It's not just we're all getting together and it's a free-for-all.
And having a chin wag.
It's a person running a meeting, asking for the answers to those 4 questions. What did we do yesterday? What are you on today? What are the potential blockers and where do you need help? 4 questions. And then moving on. And if you identify that this person needs help, okay, who do you need help from? Okay, immediately after this meeting, you need to get together, okay?
Yeah, and then you talk about it the next day, remember? Because I think you were saying that the meeting structure that you were talking about was what happened yesterday.
Yeah. And we got together.
We didn't do when I was at.
Someone here is, look, I don't know information about client X.
Yep.
Actually, I have that information. Can we meet right afterwards and I'll give you that information?
Yeah, 5 minutes is all we need.
Yeah, fantastic. Or actually, you need to read this or you need to explore this.
So when I was talking to Sim about the 4-day work week, one of the things, I know you haven't listened to it yet, Ron. You got to do your homework on your own podcast.
Yeah. You're shaming me on air.
Sim, if you're listening, Ron hasn't listened yet, but he will by the next time he sees you.
I'm still in holiday mode.
Sim said that a really interesting thing, on 5 days when they were doing the normal week, they had a bunch of meetings. Can you see where this is going to go?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So they reduced to 4 days a week. And the billable hours, he said it was acceptable that we had 6 billable hours every day. They're now much more efficient because they've been forced to. Necessity is the mother of invention. So they reduce their amount of meetings. And one of the things they do now is a daily huddle first thing in the morning. Go figure. But they also now bill the same amount, roughly, that they used to bill in a 5-day week because of efficiencies they've been driving and the reduction of meetings. So they've really created an ability for their staff to be able to focus on what's important.
And I bet you, I might be wrong, I haven't listened to the podcast.
You will, though.
I bet you that his staff are happier as a result. They're getting more done. They're feeling more fulfilled. And the efficiency is all about what? Communication.
We'd have to talk to his staff to work that out, but I would say probably yes. I know a couple of the guys in there, so they seem like they enjoy it.
So my argument is in our 50th episode, if you want to supercharge your efforts with very little effort.
With very little effort, hey?
Yeah, supercharge your efforts with
Can you
very little effort.
guarantee people it's very little effort?
If you're not doing a daily huddle, it's a discipline and people will resist it. I've got too many things to do because they don't recognize it actually is going to free them up.
Routine will set you free, Ron.
Routine will set you free. I've finally learned it. Thank you, Vern. If you try it and you do it for 2 weeks, you will find a significant improvement, not only in the efficiency of your organization and in getting things done more effectively, you will find that people are happier. And it gets to the point where they say, we can't start the day without something like this.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I'm going to ask you, in wrapping up, a few questions to give some tangible advice about how to do this to our listeners. And the first question is more a bit about the why and how these meetings have actually changed people. Because when we were having our pre-discussion, you told me about someone, we don't need to mention names, who was vehemently against doing this, and now they won't live without it. What happened and why is that? Okay.
I had one of my tech members who said, look, there's no way I can get everybody to participate in a meeting every day. They're all over the place. Some people are, off in other locations at times. They'll resist it. I don't believe in it myself. I can't see how it's going to. I said, trust me, just let's do it. And it was about 6 months that we kept having this conversation on a monthly basis about how he should be doing it. Kept coming to me with problems, usually about coordination within the organization. I said, look, what have you got to lose? Just give it a try. And he was quite, I wouldn't use the word desperate, but he wanted a solution to his coordination problem.
Yep.
So he promised me he would give it a try. And he did have a lot of resistance from other people. I can't afford to, we can't find the right time. And he just kept persisting.
Okay.
And I kept persisting, asking him about it. After about a week, he found people are starting to talk and oiling the wheels. He had to be disciplined about making sure that if you're not in the office, you call in, no excuses, except for if you're on holiday. Just kept pushing the point. And then one day he wasn't there and somebody said, well, if he's not here, we still need to have this meeting because we can't do without it. And that's when he knew that it was worthwhile.
Yeah, okay. And how long ago was that?
That was about 5 years ago.
And he's been doing it ever since?
He's been doing it ever since. He was in a different organization at that time. I think subsequently that organization hasn't been doing it, and I don't know. But he's certainly doing it in his new organization.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. So we can see that that's a really interesting insight too, right? That the staff actually went, oh, we can't do without this because it became something that they needed or they saw they needed. They did. And it's funny, sometimes we don't know what we need until we actually have it.
Yeah, that's why you go to a doctor.
So you're a business doctor, Ron.
I wouldn't like to think of myself with any near that sort of expertise. But from my experience and resisting myself, the message that someone like Vern Harnish gave out when he had seen or he had the insight to look into the way Rockefeller ran his business.
Yes.
I resisted it at my own detriment.
Yes.
Until I was looking for something and I found that this worked.
Okay. So my next question is, how do we implement this? So if you're in a business and you are listening to us, how would you recommend to those people who are listening how to go about establishing a daily huddle? And then we'll talk about after that cascading structure. So let's just start with, if we're a business of, let's say we're a business of 50 people, how would you go about doing it?
We're going to improve coordination. We always keep talking about communication improving around here. I've heard about something that tends to work. We're going to try it for a while. And here's the discipline. Here's what we're going to do. And get people into the routine. Get people into the cadence. That's often the hardest thing that I've seen.
So you're going to advertise it throughout the business first, or communicate and market it?
I would start it at the top.
Okay.
So if you have a team of 50, in all probability, you've got an executive team or a leadership group, start it with them.
Yeah.
And say, okay, guys, Now that you see the benefit of this, I want you to take this down into your group.
So in other words, the exec, if there's 5 people, they're going to start first and they're going to do a daily huddle every morning.
Yep. And look, you don't have to be at the executive level of an organization to do this with your team.
Well, there's all sorts of different business structures, as we know, but we're using that as an example for the time being. So
I would structure it out because modeling is the way most people learn.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So model from the top.
So whatever that top end looks like, whether it's managers, whether it's owners, whether it's a core group, there's going to be a core leadership group in a business of 50 people, right?
I mean, if I reflect back, I used to run an advertising group within an organization.
Yep.
And we would go to coffee every morning because we couldn't stand the coffee that was given out by the organization. It was a little cafe around the corner.
Gotcha.
And it became, and I didn't recognize the relationship, but it actually became our daily huddle. It was about 10 o'clock. It actually became our daily huddle in an informal way.
But the impression I get is there doesn't have to be rules on, it doesn't have to be called a daily huddle.
No.
Doesn't have to be called a toolbox meeting.
No.
It can be called whatever you want it to be.
I'm suggesting that there needs to be a little bit of structure and discipline if you want to limit the amount of time, limit the impact on the amount of time people have to spend at it.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
5, 10 minutes.
Well, I think, depending on the size of the team that you're talking about, 10, 15 minutes is the absolute maximum. 15
sounds like too much to me, but it depends on how many people you've got. But you've got the 3 questions you would ask, or is there 4?
Well, I think we worked out today there's probably 4. What did we do? What did we achieve yesterday?
Yep.
And what went well? What have we got on our plate for today?
Yep.
What are the obstacles we see with that?
Yep.
The blockers? And what help do I need? Now, you might be able to, what are the blockers and what help do I need?
What help do I need to get my job done today?
Yeah. And that's it.
So those 4 questions, you start asking those with the core group.
Yeah.
And then how do you cascade that out?
Well, now we've done this with our team at the executive level. Take that down to your team. What have your people got on today? What's going on in the rest of the organization? Because you've talked to the leaders in other parts of the organization. Take it down to your team. Get your people to take it down to their team. Now, it could be that you have a shift in a manufacturing organization that starts at 7 o'clock. You're not going to prevent them from having their daily huddle just because senior leaders haven't had theirs yet. It could be that you coordinate from the ground up rather than the top down. All I'm saying is, if you're going to do these daily huddles effectively, start from the top of the organization. But I did this in the advertiser group that I ran, and nobody else in the organization did. And people started talking to me about how we could be so well coordinated. And they started doing it at my peer level.
So group of 50, you're starting at, that core group of management execs, whoever they are. Then it's going down to the next level, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a leader in each of those groups?
Absolutely. That's the person who coordinates it.
And they push information in both directions, or what?
Yeah. If you're part of another group that's having a daily huddle as well, like I'm leading a team, but I'm part of my peer level. So I'm part of a daily huddle as well. I suppose the only person who doesn't have that is the CEO. But don't forget, this is about two-way communication as well.
The CEO should be reporting to the board. There's this,
but
that's not really a daily huddle.
No, you're not going to have that. This is an operational thing.
Yep.
This is about coordination on a daily basis to find out what's going on. Okay.
So it sounds pretty normal. Do you then review that structure at any point, or you just...
The important thing is, one, you have the meeting regardless of who's there. So if there's not a leader of the group there, someone deputizes and takes on the role of coordinating that meeting.
Which is what happened with the gentleman you were talking about from your tech group.
And the only thing that role does is make sure that we've got 15 minutes. We're going to go around the room. We don't have any rabbit burrows that we go down. We are just coordinating. And when people start, as they will, I just came back from holiday. Let me tell you about no. This is what we're talking about. Let's talk about your holiday over morning tea or whatever.
Yes.
So it's just about keeping the discipline.
And so
that's the only role.
That's great. So wrapping up, what's your final piece? So it looks like the structure is fairly easy to set up. It just takes determination Like whenever you start something like your friend, you have to have someone keeping them to account.
And keeping it going for, I would say, there's plenty of research that shows that if something you can do for 3 months, it becomes a habit.
Okay.
So there will be all sorts of reasons people say, I can't come to this meeting. Okay. You can't come, but we're still having it. So you have to catch up. Okay. Because we're having that meeting. There will be people who just don't participate. So you can't make me. Okay. They will come into the fold by peer pressure.
Oh.
But you've got to keep it going.
That's an interesting one. I won't get started on that yet, but I would never have allowed anyone not to participate in that.
Yeah. Well, depending on the culture of the organization, you have to take that into account. It doesn't matter because what I've seen happen is even in organizations that are permissive, people come into the fold because they can't afford not to be. When you think about it, people are hungry for information and communication and to find out what's going on.
Yep.
Here you're telling them we're doing that on a regular basis. You don't have to participate, but boy, where are you going to get your information from if you don't?
Okay, so in wrapping up, what is your final piece of advice for people who are considering starting a daily huddle if they haven't?
Nike.
Wow, okay. Tell me more.
Just do it.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Wow, that's an what's that, a 90s comment?
Well, I don't know. It seemed trite to me.
Nah, it's great. I love it. Just do it.
Just do it. And take my word for it if you want. Or do it and give me some feedback on how it didn't work. That's fine.
Now, if you want to give feedback, we have done something. We've started, finally, everyone who's listening will be about time. We've started a LinkedIn group for the Business Builders podcast. So just look up the Business Builders podcast. You just need to send a application or whatever it is. You need to just apply to become a member, and then we just have a look and click yes, or, well, we'll always pretty much click yes. But you join the group and you'll be able to have some ability to give us feedback or to add to the conversation.
That would be wonderful.
So look up the Business Builders Podcast LinkedIn group. And I think that was pretty good. I like the idea of a daily huddle. It's a good thing to do. It will improve your communication.
Look, there's all sorts of things you can do, but what I found is the most effective for the least amount of effort.
Yep. And that's our 50th episode, Ron, of the Business Builders Podcast.
Big pat on the back to us.
Big pat on the back. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate you. And the next 50 episodes will start within 2 weeks.
So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Have a great fortnight, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.